Hi, everyone. Once again, we are here live on Climate Wednesday. My name is Olumide Idowu, and I'm very happy to be hosting today's edition. And I'm sure that you all enjoy what we discussed last week. We have our guest, and she was very passionate from Zimbabwe. She actually gave us a lot of information when it comes to unlocking the potential of funding for youth in agribusiness. And that conversation led us to a very strong output, a strong commitment, where she said to us that do not eat your profits. Be proud of your hustle. Young people should add value to their produce. That was a very strong message from our guest last week, Elizabeth from Zimbabwe. And that is the reason why, as we continue this conversation on funding for farmers, today we are going to be having a very broad conversation on financing agricultural growth in Africa. A lot of people have been talking about funding for farmers, financing for farmers. How can farmers start to improve their products? And that's a conversation we have been discussing. And whether it is traditional banking, lending or private equity, and from major agribusiness to microfinance, there's no how we have to take away financing or funding. And a change in mindset is actually needed for them to also access this funding. And as we also know that Africa as an agriculture is seen as is a business opportunity, not a charity sector. And that's the reason why we are bringing to us today someone that is very passionate about the environment, climate change, agriculture, sustainable development, and is going to be focusing and discussing with us on financing agriculture growth in Africa. And it's going to open our eyes to some other ways whereby we need to look at what kind of sectors, what kind of things that our farmers can do to also be able to actually understand climate change, understand access to financing for their products. So today I'll be bringing on board our guest that's going to be sharing with us wonderful conversation. Adekunle Ayandele is going to be telling us so much today, and I'm hoping that you will all be here to listen from him. If you are joining us for the first time, we are streaming on YouTube, and we are streaming on Facebook, and we're also streaming on Twitter. So kindly join us on all those social media platforms and let us have this conversation today. Funding for farmers, that is our conversation today. Let me quickly welcome Adekunle Ayandele. It's good to have you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Olumide Idowu. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I can see your face. You are looking so good today. And that's very fantastic to also have you on board to have this conversation with us today. Quick one, can we meet you? Can you tell us about yourself, what you do, and how you are impacting farmers across the value chain? Thank you.
Once again, my name is Adekunle Ayandele, and by profession, I'm a dairy scientist and a dairy technologist. I'm very passionate about dairy farming and the dairy business generally. My first encounter with dairy was in 2013 when I had my internship at Shonga Dairy Farms in Kwara State. And for the first time, I saw foreign breeds of animals just purposely for milk production, and it was a fantastic experience for me. And from there, I finished my first degrees, and from there I went to serve, and I served in Niger State. So the farm I served, I also had the privilege of also working with local animals that are being milked for commercial purposes. So this thing just keep coming, and from there I got a master's admission to also study dairy science here in Germany, and it has been a very fantastic experience. And I've had various internship also here in Germany, where in a company that is producing condensed milk. Interestingly, we have a customer from Nigeria, so I was really wowed. So overall, by profession, I'm a very passionate dairy expert, and I also know that dairy in Nigeria is really growing, and this is going to be, part of this will be forming what I would like to talk about: knowledge gap. There is a really wide knowledge gap in the whole agricultural industry in Africa as a whole. You know, people just dive into farming or something, and it's they don't really get the required knowledge to be successful with it. So yeah, I'm preparing myself for the future of dairy in Nigeria. We have a lot of big processors that are really on board: Ala Foods, Friesland Campina, Promasidor, a lot of them now in Nigeria, establishing farms all around. So yeah, by profession, a dairy scientist, and also I am very passionate about agriculture as a whole, and not, just in the general context, but in the context of agricultural data. It is my utmost priority, because I know without data, we cannot achieve the success we are looking for in Africa agriculture. Often our investments, planning, and everything around agriculture in Africa has been on emotions. We base every decision we make on emotions, and one thing is clear: emotions and development are negatively correlated. You cannot develop anything with emotions. It has to be evidence based and data backed. So we are where we are today because we pay very little attention to data. So I am very, very passionate about agricultural data and using this data to make impact, to make decisions that are tailored to farmers' exact needs in different regions or locations. You know, we develop policies for agriculture, and the same policy for northern Nigeria is the same thing we want to adopt for southwest or southeastern Nigeria, despite the fact that we have different geographical locations and climatic conditions. So that is why I'm enthusiastic about agricultural data, and that is the work we are doing at Data Nigeria, and also trying to educate farmers, just like I mentioned, bridging the knowledge gap. And yeah, we were supposed to have a program with Climate Wed last week about educating farmers on climate change and the impact it's having on them, and how they can mitigate this impact, and as well as contribute their quota to reducing the factors that are leading to the high rates of, or the dramatic change we are experiencing with climate change, really.
Yes, thank you very much. That was concrete, like that was detailed concerning what you do, what you're passionate about, and how we need to continue to do more for the environment. And I love the part you mentioned about data. Data is something that is driving the ecosystem now, because without data, we cannot actually, assess information that we need to make changes. And without data, we cannot be able to actually get the key conversation that we are looking at. So thank you very much for all what you are doing, and the way your journey looks like shows to us that we're going to be having a very great, fantastic expert coming back home to come and do and add value to dairy system of our country. Thank you so much. And let me also use this opportunity to say we look forward to the project we are working together in Oyo State, in a community that we're talking about. I thank you very much for bringing us on board. That's Igboora, yes, for bringing us on board. We are very much happy that we are going to be joining you in that, and also see how we can, help the farmers to understand what climate change means to them and how they can understand it in their local languages. That one will be very interesting for them to also help them to prepare ahead so that they will be able to know what are the things that we need to do and what we don't need to do. Thank you so much. So today, we have you today, and our conversation is focusing on financing agricultural growth in Africa. As we know, you've said a lot about the agriculture space in Africa, the food production space in Africa, how things are going. We also know that we need to do more when it comes to producing, when it comes to, supporting farmers to grow more. And as you know from what I've heard, that most of the food we are seeing today, most of them are from the small scale farmers, because they are putting much effort in planting, much effort in producing, but there are a lot of issues that is not making them to grow and to actually invest more. So today, this conversation is going to be very, very detailed, as you know. So, sir, let's start. How do you, I want you to let people know, how do you describe a farmer and what is their role in the society? Because that is very, very important.
Thank you very much. Well, I've been a farmer myself for about 6-7 years now, and yeah, you remember I mentioned that I served in Mina, and after I finished serving, I stayed back and I started growing food crops, yam especially, because Niger State is rich in yam production. So I thought, okay, the land is there, the resources are there, so why not? I ventured into it, and yeah, I've grown yam, maize, I've raised cattle, and I would describe a farmer as God's representative on earth and probably God's assistant, because they ensure that human existence continue. Without a farmer, we won't be here. I mean, nobody can survive without food. So our primary source of existence, or our continued existence as humans, largely depends on the sacrifices of these farmers. And I call it sacrifice because when you look at it holistically, it's not one profitable venture. So people, yeah, you can see a lot of painting, glamorous painting about agriculture being profitable, this and that. I'm not saying it's not profitable, but you know, there are a lot of uncertainties around agriculture, as such that this year you can be profitable and the next year you are in serious loss, you know. So it takes somebody with deep sense of sacrifice and service to say, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. So a farmer is God's personal assistant and representative to make sure that life moves on. Yeah.
Very much. Thank you very much. That's, a farmer is a God sent to us, because like from my parents and from elderly people, I always understand that the food we eat, the clothes we wear, and where to stay, they are very important in life. So farmers' position in our life is very, very important. And that's why we have them as one God sends to the earth to provide food, to make sure that we get something to get ourselves immune system work. So thank you very much. And I'm sure that a lot of people that are watching us, they also have different definition of who a farmer is and how their role is in the society. So let me quickly go to the next question. We are not going to take much time today. What shift have we seen in agricultural development in Africa, and how is affecting economic growth? What shift have you seen?
Well, regarding shifts in agricultural developments in Africa, it's like a roller coaster sort of a thing, and it is we have structural changes in agriculture globally. It's not just peculiar to Africa. For example, in Europe and some part of American, I mean, I'm just stating this as example to generalize that these structural changes are global. We have young people leaving the farm in drones because there are more lucrative jobs. I mean, they could work office jobs and earn more money than they earn tilling the ground or making their animals. For example, in Europe, we have more family farms that has come a long way from generations. We have like 3 generations whereby grandparents were dairy farmers, increasing they had their parents inherited it, and then the children are no longer interested in inheriting their parents' farm because you could make 300 cows a day, and at the end of the month, somebody that works in an office is making more money than you with less stress. So these structural changes is a very dangerous one because young people are leaving the farm in drones, and old people are getting older. Their generation will pass, and our food production might be in serious crisis if this is not quickly checked. While advanced countries are doing all they could to check this, for example, in the EU, there is special subsidy for young farmers apart from the general subsidies. They have special subsidies if you are between, I mean, a young farmer between 18 and 30 years or thereabouts, or 35. There are special money they pay to them per acre of land they farm per year. So this is like an encouragement. Now coming back to Africa, between 2000, between the year 2000 and 2010, I could say there is an important structural changes where we have young people really moving into the agricultural space. Like, I mean, you could check the statistic from 2000 even up to 2015. We have a lot of young people that have occupied the agricultural space, coming up with very bright innovations, better ideas, trying to go into commercial agriculture and not sticking to the old and cutlass method of their parents. There was really a very good growth, both in crop and livestock industries. I mean, you can check poultry around today. You will find out that we have higher number of young people running our poultry farm in Nigeria. Livestock, cattle ranching, a lot of young people are getting involved in cattle ranching today. And also the crop sector, maize, cassava production, especially the last couple of years when cassava began to attract very good money. But from 2020, I mean, there about 2017, 2020 to this stage, although it's still very mixed, but I am projecting that from 2020 to the next 10 years, the narrative may change again. And this change of narrative might see young people moving out of agriculture. I mean, you have experiences of young people saying, okay, or even adults saying, okay, after some people resigned from their work because they heard that, agriculture is the next crude oil and all of that. And there were a lot of regrets, I should be honest, because it's not what it seems. You could write a very beautiful business plan and what have we, and then you get it by uncertainties. Now the challenges with climate change in the last decade or 5 years, very clearly, rain patterns has changed in Nigeria with more droughts and terrible droughts. So it's eating into the productivity of these farmers, and also you have others farmers issues. I mean, as a young farmer, I mean, you took 2 million naira loan, for example, grew cassava and what have we, and then maybe when your crops are doing very well, you are very happy. You just woke up one morning to meet a destroyed farms overrun by herds of cattle. I mean, this is not just an illustration. They are occurrences, things that happened, So all of these, and because they are happening unabated, it's killing the spirit of young people. I mean, I'm focusing young people because obviously the older farmers their generation is expiring, and it's up to us to take up the challenges. So in the next decade, if this is not checked, if some of these challenges are not checked, we end up realizing that the pattern is going to change again from young people leaving the farm, and our fate we be hanging on old farmers that will still be doing small scale farming. Because most young people involved in farming today are not using hoe and cutlass. For the record, a lot of them could do an hectare of land, sorry, and apparently they need to put a tractor and use certain machines to operate. So, but if they continue to record losses year in, year out, their morale keeps going down, and then we have a change of pattern from what we used to have in the last 10-15 years. So that's why I said the pattern is a kind of roller coaster, going up and coming down.
Wow. That's so wonderful. Thank you so much. What I'm taking away from here is when you mentioned the issue of Ed's farmer, Edersman, issue of conflict in farming, and how you said the younger generation might be shifting, leaving the farm, because it is very, very true that the generation we have now are not the generation of hoe and cutlass. Everybody's looking at a tech way of farming, a tech way of agriculture. And I say that that shift is gradually approaching very fast. And it only takes time for people to actually understand where the direction of this sector is going to actually understand where we can be able to help ourselves to understand that farming is a very big business. And like I said, it's not a charity as usual again. A lot of people are making money, a lot of people are investing, a lot of people are cashing out, let me use that word. And it's very, very important that as this thing are moving the way you say roller coasting, then we need to start looking at what are the direction where we need to focus. So thank you very much. If you are still watching us on this channel, this is Climate Wednesday, and this month we are focusing on funding for farmers. And the reason why is because we know that farmers are very important in this sector, in the agriculture sector. And for them to access funding is a very big issue. So what can we talk about? How they can access funding, how they can tap financing for their produce. It's something that is very, very important. You can watch us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That is where we are streaming live now. Thank you very much. So quick one. Let's move to the next question. Why is agricultural production in Sub-Saharan Africa remains low compared to the rest of the world, especially in Africa? Why is it so low? Because we've seen a lot of technology, a lot of people are investing a lot into agriculture, and looking at the way we produce our production in Sub-Saharan Africa, why is it remaining so low? Are we not getting it right, or what is actually happening?
Thank you very much. Just like I said, for me, when people mention challenges around agriculture, I don't always like capital to be the first constraint. I don't like when I add capital as the first constraint. Just like I earlier mentioned, knowledge gap is missing. A lot of things are changing. The world is changing really quick, and we cannot be using 20 years knowledge. We cannot be applying 20 years knowledge to today's realities. So knowledge gap is too wide when it comes to Africa agriculture, and also policies. So we joke a lot with policies in Africa, and we don't. Our policies are very unstable, and also technology-wise, we are not receptive or too backward or not investing right in it. Israel, for example, is a very small country, and it's feeding a large part of the world. Just technology, research and development. So if we bring all of this together, they are really, really lacking when it comes to sub-Saharan Africa agricultural production. Research and development, very poor. Infrastructure, very poor. Mechanization is still very poor. You have farmers have very poor access to tractors, to farm machines, and also land ownership issue. Maybe farmers need to lease farm, or the same land he uses this year, he doesn't have access to that much. So when you look at all of this problem put together, you will realize that growth is not rocket science. And if you don't put what you're supposed to put in place, we'll just be using the 19th century approach, and we'll be expecting the 21st century result. It's not going to work. So why our production is still very low in Africa are strongly attached to all of these factors that I've mentioned. And if I'm going to state, for example, the European Union entire budget, the EU entire budget, dedicates 35% of the whole entire EU budget to farmer subsidy. Just subsidy, and it's direct cash transfers to farmers. So in this way, these farmers even overproduce, and from their overproduction, this country are able to export a whole lot to other countries. And you know the implications for that. Because of this overproduction from them, African cannot even compete in their market. I mean, we can compete in the market when these people bring their grains or anything. The price have to really go down, because we are producing with hoe and cutlass of very primitive method of production, and they can grow thousands of hectares of land and make a lot of money, I mean, from economy of scales. Despite all of this, they are still very heavily subsidized. But where you have to struggle with capital in Africa, you struggle with a whole lot of uncertainties. There is no way you can expect an increased production. From just like I have mentioned earlier, the issues with climate change, we are unable to provide strategies or methodologies to combat it as such that our farmers can benefit. Irrigation is popular in developed nations. In Africa, it is not popular because it is still quite expensive for smallholder farmers to afford, and 70 or more percent of the food production in sub-Saharan Africans are grown by smallholder farmers. So these farmers, the unfortunate part is, even after they sell their produce in a year, they don't have food that can carry them throughout the year. So you imagine a farmer still buying food before the end of, before the beginning of another production cycle. It's weird. So when we are looking at dissecting why our productivity in sub-Saharan Africa is small, we have to look at the knowledge gap. Extension services has collapsed in Africa generally. And when you look at the years where Nigeria, for example, when our economy was running on agriculture before the discovery of crude oil, extension service was in top gear. I mean, the World Bank was financing extension services then. And these extension services were not in isolation. They were strongly attached to research centers. That is when we have a lot of research institutes in Nigeria, you know. So when these extension agents go to the farmers, they get farmers' data. They make, they get farmers' challenges. Maybe there is a pest invasion. They take it to research institute. The research institute develop solutions, and then the extension agents take back the solutions to the farmers. So there was this cordial relationship between farmers, extension agents, research institute, and government interventions, you know. So we have evidence-based decision-making process in those era. But look at where we are now. There is no authentic data. There is no extension services. Farmers are largely on their own. All the new technology, the new methods, modern agricultural practices, you just see conferences holding in Lagos, in Abuja, and what have we. What there is no decentralization of all this information to the farmers in the agrarian communities. So, and who are supposed to make this decentralization happen? Extension agents. But the government is not willing to fund extension agents again. And if you realize why the government is spending a lot of money, just like you said, a lot of money in saying, okay, we are spending a lot of money in agriculture, we will not get results because monies are going into less priority stuffs. You cannot keep spending money on production, and the things that are supposed to support the production to give good output are not in place. You remember the Anchors Borrower Program, for example. I knew of a year they gave farmers soybean seed and set other inputs like herbicides and what have we. And that year, rain stopped. I mean, that was last year. Rain stopped around September, October. And farmers are used to rain stopping November, December, at least in the southwest. Now rain stopped September. At the end of the day, all the investments the government made in seed and input, and they couldn't get it back. Also, the loan payback from farmers has been generally poor over the years. There is no monitoring and evaluating system, which could have been also carried out by extension agents. So when you look at all of this together, it's like we have misplaced priorities. You just give farmers fertilizer, give them seed, give them herbicide, and you say after you harvest, we come to take. Do you ever care about the challenges this farmer face with herdsmen? Do you care about the water this farmer is going to use, whether the rain is going to be sufficient? Now we have NIMET. NIMET predictions has been grossly inaccurate over the years, to the extent that farmers could not even trust their predictions any longer. So if you give me seed, you give me fertilizers, you give me everything I need, but the weather and rain predictions, the knowledge, which is very key, the knowledge that I need to get the right result is lacking. So at the end of the day, it's that support you are giving me is like you won't get the right output. It's the list of need on my priority list. So if we could get some of these things right, like let's increase extension services to bridge knowledge gaps. Our research and development, for example, we have been battling with armyworms for about 5-6 years now, and armyworms still keep destroying maize farms, and reducing output. So when you look at all of these things, knowledge gap is very essential. We have to be able to bridge the knowledge gap. We have to be able to increase extension services. We have to be able to increase commercial or mechanized farming. We have to be able to pay attention to data. When you pay attention to data, you know what farmers need per region, and then you are able to develop the right policies. For example, the Maputo agreement arrived at in 2003 by African leaders. They said, okay, they are going to be committing 10% of their budget to agriculture. But since 2003, almost no country has been able to match that commitment. The last, for example, 2021 agricultural budget for Nigeria was about 200 billion out of our trillions of naira budget. 200 billion was earmarked for agriculture. This 200 billion is less than 5% of the entire total budget. Are we serious about food security? We cannot be relying on foreign aids or grants or intervention all the time as a source of financing. Charities, they say, begins at home. If we can be committed to the Maputo Agreement of 2003, I think it was only late President Yar'Adua that came close around 2009, eating about 9 to 11% of the entire budget shifted to agriculture. So, and I'm telling you that 2021 budget has just less than 5% at 200 billion naira. And this 200 billion was just the allocated. It's not even the disbursed. And eventually from the disbursed, the ones that we end up with on capex, capital expenditure, is still going to be very minute, So at the end of the day, the smallholder farmers, the interventions that should get to them doesn't even get to them. Even the little that are earmarked for them end up with executive farmers in Abuja that have not even stepped to the farms at all, So as far as I'm concerned, there are a lot of issues that should border on policies. And my own recommendation, if I were to be in any decision-making process, there is no need for a federal minister of agriculture, because agriculture is very localized. Give powers to state, federal agricultural budget should be shared with state extensively, and there should be strict monitoring and evaluation. So farmers in Igbora or any local communities do not have access to Abuja. So when you are designing agricultural intervention projects from Abuja and you don't know what is happening in the agrarian communities, it doesn't really make much sense. So there should be decentralization of interventions. You should not be designing all intervention projects for farmers in Abuja. At the end of the day, it doesn't get to them. It ends in Abuja. You only have selected few that they will capture their pictures and put on the news for us to say they are supporting farmers. Now, for example, just yesterday or 2 days ago, from Premium Times, I read that Buhari said that 12.1 billion naira has been earmarked for about 100 million farmers selected. That's just like 2 days ago. So I saw people making exchanges on Twitter that, okay, please, where are these farmers? Where is this money? Why are we not part of this and that? Because at the end of the day, it needs to be cooked up and the money will disappear into thin air. But the real farmers do not have access to all of this fund. So I would just say that data is important, authentic farmer data. When we have authentic farmer data, this money will be going to the right channel. And this we also, maybe I should conclude on this, that farmers should also be interested in forming cooperatives. No government or individual, or no government or NGO will deal with individuals. When you form strong cooperatives, you can make very strong demands from the government. So cooperatives is an essential way for young people, especially. Young people like to operate in isolation. It's like we like competing, but we must get to the stage of forming cooperatives or joining cooperatives. When we have strong cooperatives, we will be able to tap into the resources that are available for farmers. And we, the right and authentic farmers, getting our hands dirty, will be able to be the right beneficiaries of all these interventions and not some hijackers from Abuja.
Thank you so much. That was so deep. I don't know where to start from. Is it from knowledge gap? Is it from policies? Is it from mechanization, farm mechanisms? Is it from land ownership? Is it from growth? Like you said, growth is not a rocket science. And is it from capital to support farmers? Is it from strategy and methodology? You also mentioned the issue of irrigation. I think a lot is going on that I think the government of Africa and Nigeria as well need to listen to the people that are actually at the local level. You talk about the extension services. I also remember I've read something about it. Where are they today? What is the role of our research institutions? Why are they not really functioning the way they're supposed to be? the extension agents that are supposed to be getting data that will drive solution, that will drive the need for each local community, is no more there again. And how are we paying attention to farmers, even their well-being? How are we paying attention to that? Is very, very key. And you mentioned of decentralization, which I think if every government is looking at the success of farming in Africa, then we need to start looking at decentralizing some certain things to make sure that everybody have the support. From what you said again about the 12.1 billion for farmers, I think we keep hearing this every time there's budget out. Figures that is not bottom approach, figures that doesn't drive solution for agribusiness. And I think is one of the key problems we are facing in the industry and this sector, that even the younger generation that want to go into farming are scared to go to farming. Even the rich men that want to invest into farming is also scared of what is going to happen in future or in a couple of months. So it's very, very important to start looking at all these your key recommendations and why they need to be much, appreciating for supporting funding for farmers. Yeah, and I think I will stop there because you've said a lot, and I'm sure that everybody watching us from anywhere today will be able to understand that funding for farmer is very key. And for us to have that, we need to start looking at decentralizing a lot of stuff. We need to start looking at what happens to our extension services that can help us to know where the loopholes are so that these farmers can get the right supports. Because there's something you mentioned that I think the cooperative is also very, very key, because farmers themselves, they should not sit down and be waiting for one God to come and give them money to farm. And I think the idea of cooperative is also something that is key, that they can leverage on to make them to gather investment, funding, and financing for their products. So thank you so much for that. Our time is really going, but how do we get investors to invest in farmers across Africa? And what challenges are they facing? I think you've mentioned a lot about challenges, but where do you think farmers should be looking at when it comes to investors? And which sector should invest in farmer? And I know you have some key information about that, because a lot of people, how to access finances is another problem itself. But what kind of, what do you think, how do you think they get investors to invest in their farmer across Africa? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just like I earlier stated, investing in agriculture is not something that people are willing to do very quickly, because it takes time. And even usually when banks give loans to farmers, there is always requirement of moratorium of about 6 months or a year. Which mostly does not happen with maybe other businesses. And also, when we are talking about smallholder farmers, because of their low level of banking knowledge, banks seem to have higher transaction costs dealing with smallholder farmers and all of that. And in the midst of all this, we have seen many startups, so-called tech startups, that are exploiting farmers, all in the name of accessing funds for them, saying, come and do fundraising, or because ordinarily you can play on the emotions of people to say, okay, let's support farmers, and they will. But there have been instances where there is lack of trust. That's one of the challenges, not on the how now. Some of these people take money and say, okay, they are helping farmers to produce more, to do this, to do that. But for me, the major challenge for me is that the impact on farmers are not really fair. Farmers keep getting impoverished day in, day out. But these intermediaries are cashing out. Some of them, you see them doing, trading this money in Forex and not really in agriculture. This is a no fact. But the thing when we are talking about the key challenges, just like I mentioned, is the prevailing environment. One challenge that we should address head on is prevailing environment. When you make a conducive environment available for farming, investors will be willing to troop in, you know. But when there is no conducive environment, you don't want to put your money there. I don't want to put my money there, you know. And it takes people with real passion to say, okay, anyhow it's going to be, because food production is I always appreciate the fact that we want farmers to be business oriented when it comes to agriculture, you know. But I'm always also trying to correct a thought process. If we want to make food, agriculture, everything about business, we enter trouble, because when you want to give farmer loan and you are expecting that he must make profit, it is a dangerous thinking, because a farmer cannot make profit all the time. You know from what we have said earlier on, you can plant 100 acres of maize. That happened last year. Thousands of acres of maize were lost to drought. Imagine, people were expecting to plant. People planted in the second maize production cycle, and they planted around July. So normally, if you plant around July, you should expect that with 2 months good rain or thereabouts, harvesting in October, November, you have very good harvest. So imagine you as an investor gave someone money to plant 100 acres of maize, and then rain disappeared. It's not his fault. He has a lot to deal with. He's dealing with nature, you know. So when we talk about agricultural funding, it has to come from, just like an expert put it, it's agriculture or food production. It's a public good, and it has to be supported heavily by public resources. I'm not saying individual should not invest. I'm not saying that we should not be business oriented about agriculture, but we must also be careful about this reality. So when we talk about assessing fund, like I mentioned, when we have conducive environment, when conducive environment is provided, when everything is right, when we have the right data, you know, people will still be willing to say, okay, we understand that this comes with a lot of risk, but with insurance options, I mean, also smallholder farmers are not into insurance like that, and that's the problem. So, but when we have insurance options, when they form cooperatives and they subscribe to some insurance package, even with drought and whatever, they are still not going to make losses. So how to attract funds? I will say that people should form cooperative. I will say that over and over again. And after you form cooperatives, make the cooperative to run very transparently. Then ensure the farmers in the cooperatives. When this is said, for example, KfW Bank is a German bank, currently has an investment worth 117 million euro in Africa. You understand? There are a lot of funds that are going into African agriculture, a lot of them. But the access by smallholder farmers is a challenge. Smallholder farmers are not really able to access this because these international bodies do not have good channels to these smallholder farmers. You know of GIZ in Nigeria. GIZ is also from Germany, and they are doing a whole lot. I mean, a whole lot in in financing agriculture in Africa. For example, there's this Eritech Eritech is a startup that installs irrigation facilities on farms, drip irrigations and what have we, solar panels, everything. I think they have a kind of partnership with GIZ, and so the thing is, with the right environment, conducive environment, and the right positioning, and the positioning comes from farmers assembling themselves into cooperatives. With the right positioning and conducive environment, it is not difficult to access fund. And also, just like I said, from the perspective of agriculture being public goods, our government should be really dedicated to investing in agriculture, and they should make it decentralized, and they should awaken all the dead factors that I have been mentioned earlier on. If all of these are there, potential investors will see the results. Potential investors want data to make decisions, but there is no reliable data. For example, we are talking about the Nigerian livestock transformation plan, 2020 to 2050. The data that this plan was developed upon was a 1990 livestock census that was done in Nigeria. That was almost 30 years ago. So I think it was just simulated, and some things were developed around it. Now imagine using almost 30 years old data to make projections for 2020 to 2050. It is dangerous. So you may not achieve some of the needed results. So if we want to attract investors, I mean, attract funding, attract finance, a lot of it is coming into, there are a lot of finances in agriculture, in Africa agriculture, to be honest. So, but to have the access, there must be right positioning, and there must be conducive environment. So when investors see all of this, it gives them confidence. But when all of these are not there, and transparency is also an issue, then it's become a problem. And if you look at, for example, most of the loans that government has given farmers, if you track the records, there is always high level of defaulting by farmers. So our farmers also need to improve on getting used to free buys. Even when private organizations are coming with funding options, the farmers are always confusing grants to loans. Grants and loans are not the same. So farmers have some kind of sense of entitlement, and that is really creating hazards for financing smallholder farmers. So there should be good awareness, and I think some experts believe that it is not the farmer's fault. It is a problem of asymmetrical information. The farmers are not equally informed about the financial facilities, whether it is loan or it is grant or what it is. So it's a challenge. So when there is the right information, the right message is passed, the conducive environment, policies that will also not scare investors away, when all of these are there, there are a lot of sources of funding that farmers can tap into, especially as cooperatives.
Wow, thank you very much. That was so detailed, and I can say it categorically that the issue we are facing is not only the government issue, and it's like interwoven. We need to start looking inward. You mentioned insurance options. You mentioned the issue of irrigation facilities. You mentioned conducive position. When we put ourselves in the right position and conducive environment, we'll be able to access funding. And you also said that government should be dedicated to farming industry as the agriculture industry, and looking at how they can decentralize it. I think is very, very key. But one thing I'm taking home from what you just said is the issue of data to make decision. When there is no data to make decision, and you're referring to the livestock plan that they just worked on, How can you be using a 30 years data to be influencing or projecting for another year? I think that is uncalled for. It's something that we need to look inward and start looking at our system of making farming, like somebody say, make farm sexy for everybody, so that you and I can do farming and we can farm with so much confidence. And the issue of investing in agriculture as well, like you said, it takes a lot of time before you can even convince or confuse or can even make people to say, I want to invest in farming, which is true. I've seen a lot of people that are scared and a lot of people that have invested into farming, and they, along the way, something one or two, three happens. But I think your comment of the right position and conducive environment is going to actually help us to drive funding and financing for agriculture. Somebody on the line from Facebook said the criteria for assessing those schemes are not friendly. Local farmers are not benefiting even from the federal government, even if the federal government is giving. I think it's just repeating your what you just said, and which I think is very, very important. And there's another thing. He said, what is the right environment that attracts investment? I think you've also mentioned those keywords and so on. So if you are still online, you can still send your message. You can still watch this again and again and again to understand how you can make yourself or position yourself to attract funding for your farming system, which is very, very important. So thank you very much for that knowledge. Say knowledge gap. Then we are getting more knowledge today to actually understand. So this question is going to be your, maybe let me say 2-3 recommendation for African farmers. You've mentioned, but I want you to now make the recommendation in a statement. 2 or 3 recommendation for African farmers to access finance for their farming. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just like I said, the most important, the most basic one is still that farmers should form cooperatives. When farmers form cooperatives, it's give them unhindered access to funding. Cooperative is a positioning. It's you register with the CAC, you are running like a company, you know. So it's going to look like a company writing to access a loan or something. So for me, the strongest one is just still going to be farmers organizing themselves into cooperatives, and a well-registered cooperatives, and of course insured. You know, if an investment understand that your company or your company is insured, they have peace of mind that their fund is actually safe to a larger extent, right? So the key thing for me is going to be that farmers should stop working in isolation. It helps nobody. So, but when they come together, for example, let me give an example. There is the program we're supposed to have, right? We work with 2 farmers cooperative. Our intervention there, we provide them inputs, seed, and fertilizers. You understand? And we guide them. We are bridging some knowledge gaps, providing some extension services. It wouldn't have been easy for us as a group to go to individual farmers to provide this. You understand? But because they are some cooperatives, it was easy for us to have an agreement, and we ran a preliminary data collection. We know how much they are. We know how many acres of land they grow, individual farmers' capacity, their farm locations, and everything. And based on this data, we spoke with some investors and we got some money. You know, we provided seed, we provided fertilizers, and we're also providing extension services for them. So imagine in our own little capacity, our little capacity, if we are able to do this just because we have the right data, which we also collected anyway, that was the first step for us. And I think that's one thing that is missing when people want to invest also. You don't have the data of the community or anything. You just want to invest based on, okay, there are lands here and there are farmers. No, it doesn't work that way. So because these people are, they form a cooperative, it was easy for us to deal with them. So the first and the basic recommendation for me, just like I mentioned, is for farmers to position themselves rightly. And somebody asked, what is a conducive environment look like? A conducive environment is one with the least threat to success of your investment. You don't have issues with security. Insecurity. Your farmers is not afraid of being kidnapped on the farm. There is not going to be issue of others overrunning your farm. So, and all of this, if you ask me, can farmers provide this by themselves? If there is a cooperative, you can also. This cooperative I'm talking about, for example, they hire agro rangers in Igbora. So these agro rangers patrol their farms, and when they have issues, they call these agro rangers and they attend to them immediately. If there is a cooperative that has organized themselves this much, boy, you are not afraid to invest in them, right? So that's like them providing a conducive environment for themselves. So best way to attract investment is just going to be that farmers organize themselves and they have very good database. So that's where we are coming as Food Data. These are the key essentialities of our operations. We believe that if, for example, we have data of farmers in Oyo State, across Oyo State, we will know, okay, in Ibarapa axis, they do excellent on maize. We will know that in Okyogun, they do excellent on cassava. In Ibadan, they do very well on fruit and vegetables, and what have we. So we will use this data to make categorizations for where investors can put their money, and the farmers' data, the amount of acres they have and everything will be important criteria for investors to say, okay, I want to invest in this region because I'm interested in this crop. And also, off-takers, there will be ready market, because from our data, we can tell you that 1,000 acres of maize has been cultivated in Ibarapa right now. In the next 4 months, it will be ready for harvest. And if you are interested as an off-taker, you can show your interest. And in the next 4 months, because you see also follow up, maybe during harvest, you can say, okay, from the harvest, this is how much that has been harvested, and this is how much you can get from this region. When there is that data drives investment. This is one reality we are still yet to catch up with in Africa. If there is no data, nobody have any tool to make concrete decision. So maybe this is not up to the farmers alone. Maybe this is where we need private organizations like ourselves that are trying to capture farmers' data and in exchange for values. Because of course, we use this data to make decisions that help them at the long run. So for recommendations, this is what I'm able to wrap my head around.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Adekunle Ayandele. It's so wonderful to have you today on our new edition of Funding for Farmers. And let me quickly reiterate on what you just said, which I think overall of what we've discussed today, I can say that the key point for me is data attracts investments. Without data, there's no how we can attract investment that is sustainable. And with data, we can be able to project, we can be able to actually give adequate information for that actual program we are working on. And also the farmers should form cooperative, which is very, very key. And that is going to position them to accessing funding for their farming or for the agricultural programs. And you also mentioned that farmers should stop working in isolation, which I think is very, very key for them to drive financing and funding for their agricultural growth. Thank you very much. And I want to say a big thank you for giving us your time and to also appreciate your great work you are doing in Igbora, which is something that I can't wait to be there to see the farmers. I'm very happy because we are doing this, and I want to look forward more to see how those farmers continue to grow and continue to invest in themselves and continue to provide access for food to the community they are and beyond that community. It's a wonderful moment for us today on this edition of Funding for Farmer, Financing Agricultural Growth in Africa. As we all know, without food, most of us will not be talking today. So food is very, very important in human system. Thank you very much and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. So just like a recap or something, it's very interesting to have you host this session. And as a rep of Food Data Nigeria, I'm able to say we look forward to how we continue to partner to make a difference, especially in the lives of smallholder farmers. I've been part of them. I know their experience. I know where they show pains, and they should not continue to remain small. If they continue to remain small, we will continue to be in trouble of food crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Have a lovely week ahead and enjoy your stay. Yeah, so thank you very much, everybody. It has been a wonderful moment today on Climate Wednesday. As you can see, our guest today has given us that parting shot that data attracts funding. And as we close the curtain today, I want to tell all the small-scale farmers out there that are looking to, finance their agricultural growth and they're looking forward to invest into farming to actually look at how they can use data or data to attract funding for themselves. Because without that, we are not anywhere. So catch you next week on another edition of Climate Wednesday and have a great and lovely weekend. Bye.